Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing really well. Back today to give you some recommendations to go along with the prompts for Non-Fiction November this year. Yes, Non-Fiction November is back. It is for the last year going to be run by Olive over at A Book Olive. To my knowledge, Non-Fiction November is still going to be going on, but it's her last year hosting. So definitely wanted to mark this occasion with at least one video. And so yeah, in this video I'm going to be going through each of the 4 prompts that Olive has set and recommending 3 books that I've read that you may want to add to your TBR this time round. Those 4 prompts being code, path, shot and join. They're always very open so that you can interpret them in whatever way you see fit. So yeah, without much further ado, let's just get straight on into these prompts and recommendations. So for the first prompt we have code. Now obviously that could refer to technology or ciphers, people trying to crack codes, but it could also be to do with law and morality, so personal codes of ethics. Olive even suggested potentially you could do a book about fashion, so dress codes, which was a bit of a relief to me because I do not read very many books about technology, so I was coming up short initially when I was thinking about ideas for this prompt. So sticking to the fashion theme, the first book that I thought of was Style and Substance by Garnett. I have a whole review video on this book, but in short this is a collection of essays, lots of different fashionable people all talking about their personal dress codes, their sense of style. There's a lot of discussion in here about fashion rules and when you should break them, going from your basic pieces to your most outlandish, from wearing a very minimalist or black outfit to wearing leopard print. Lots of different topics of conversation in here, all about the items that we wear, and from lots of different figures, from actors, fashion designers, photographers. It's really fun and approachable, especially if, like me, you are somebody who maybe spends a little bit too long in front of your wardrobe trying to decide what to wear. My next recommendation for the prompt of code is Hidden Figures by Margot Shetterley, which tells the story of the African-American computers, women mathematicians who worked at NASA during those early days in the space program. You'll probably know the movie that came out a few years ago, which focused on 3 of the most influential women, Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan and Mary Jackson. I especially wanted to bring this one up because of the figure of Dorothy Vaughan. The way that this links into code is how she ended up teaching herself and her staff the Fortran code in order to maintain their jobs, and went on to end up heading up the programming section of the analysis and computation division at Langley. As somebody who dropped science and maths at GCSE, cannot help but be impressed. Never ask me a question that isn't about arts and humanities, I can't do it. And then my final recommendation for the prompt of code is Gentleman Jack, a biography of Anne Lister, Regency landowner, seducer and secret diarist by Angela Steidele, which does as the title suggests, it is a biography of the 19th century figure Anne Lister, who owned Shibden Hall in Halifax, my hometown, who was a very, very unconventional figure, not only as a landowner. She was known as Gentleman Jack within the town because of her very masculine demeanour and style of dressing. She's also known now for keeping a very long line of diaries, many of which were written in a secret code, which when it was decoded a couple of decades ago revealed her many relationships with women. Not only was she a prolific writer, but a prolific seducer. She's often dubbed the first modern lesbian. It's just such an interesting, unique look into Regency life through this very unconventional figure, and is such a fascinating figure, one that I've often said I probably wouldn't get on with very well if I met her in person, but I do admire her just for her gumption alone. The next prompt is Path, which obviously recommends it to a book about travel, to journeys, could be about walking, it could be the history of a road, so for example the Silk Road, but also could be about life's journeys, life's paths. My first recommendation is very literal to this prompt, and it is Wild by Cheryl, which is her memoir recounting her journey going down the Pacific Crest Trail, hiking 1,100 miles on her own, basically as a means of self-discovery after she had a lot of personal setbacks, about the people that she met, the wildlife she encountered, and what it taught her about resilience. I don't often recommend books from my work, but when I saw this prompt I couldn't not recommend it, and it is Literary Journeys, mapping fictional travels across the world of literature. This little collection by John McMurtrie. It is this absolutely stunning illustrated guide to all of the most famous journeys and travels throughout literature, from Homer's Odyssey to Don Quixote to On the Road by Jack Kerouac. I'm really annoyed because I've been sick this week and my copy of this book is on my desk at work, but just trust me, it is so stunning. I'm going to try and insert some video footage now, just flipping through this book. If you are a travel fan, if you are a lover of books, then this is definitely one that you should pick up. And then my final recommendation is Red Sauce, Brown Sauce by Felicity Cloake. I mainly went for this one because I often end up recommending One More Croissant for the Road, and I always end up neglecting the sequel book. But yes, as I say, this is a sequel to One More Croissant for the Road by Felicity Cloake. In that book she was cycling through France and sampling all the many famous French dishes, but particularly judging each town by their croissants. And in this book, Red Sauce, Brown Sauce, source, she's doing a cycle tour of the UK and testing out the Great British Breakfast, whether it is a seaside cafe, a countryside inn, or anything in between, particularly looking at cultural differences. And there are so many cultural variations even within the UK when it comes to the full English breakfast. It is part travel writing, part memoir, part food diary, about a very tasty British tradition. The next prompt is shot. This could obviously be referring to the military, it could be referring to medicine, vaccination, inoculation, it could be referring to alcohol, so a shot of whiskey or gin or vodka or whatever your preference is. Olive says it could also be referring to a theory, so something that you're taking a shot at. I definitely wanted to lean into the alcohol prompt, and for this I have A Short History of Drunkenness by Mark Forsyth, which is just such a funny, very witty, very dry exploration of humanity and its relationship to alcohol through the millennia, how alcohol has influenced society, going up from ancient history all the way through to Prohibition America. We talk about British pub culture, medieval taverns, Viking feasts, and many more occasions for drinking. I would say you should take a shot every time Mark Forsyth uses a different version of slang for drunk, but you would be pretty sozzled by the end of it. And I am not going to be held responsible for you having to get your stomach pumped. My next recommendation is Hamilton the Revolution, edited by Lin-Manuel, Miranda and Jeremy McCarter. You could also do the biography Alexander Hamilton by Ron Chernow, but I do believe I have recommended this book for Nonfiction November before. But this is basically the libretto to Hamilton, but annotated with lots of different notes and behind the scenes information about the making of the musical Hamilton, all of Lin-Manuel Miranda's different musical and historical inspirations, early drafts of lyrics, costume sketches, and so much more. Obviously, the link to shot in here is the song My Shot. The internet tells me that the word shot is said in Hamilton 53 times. Honestly, I thought it might have been more. And also, obviously, we know what happened to Alexander Hamilton. So if that is not a good suggestion for this prompt, then I don't know what is. And then my final book recommendation for the word shot is Women vs. Hollywood by Helen O'Hara. This is a deep dive into the history of women in the film industry, going from the very first silent films all the way up to the modern day, basically exploring how women's roles in Hollywood have evolved, sometimes for the better, but often for the worse. Particularly interesting was to see how in the silent film era, there were a lot of women who were involved in directing, screenwriting, producing, only for these women to end up being pushed to the sidelines as the industry got more prominent. Obviously, the relationship to shot is quite clear. Movies, film shots, getting the right shot for film. This could also be a good book for the prompt code, thinking about the impact on the Hays Code on women's place in the film industry. But yeah, this is a really fascinating, if sometimes quite brutal history. And then the final prompt is join, which really speaks of togetherness. It could be about parties, celebrations, family. It could even be an essay collection because you're joining all of these pieces together. First book I have to recommend is At Christmas We Feast by Annie Gray, which is in short a history of Christmas food, how the food that we eat at the most wonderful time of the year has changed over the centuries, going from medieval feasts to the Victorian Christmas to our Christmases today, from mince pies to plum pudding to turkey, all of these Christmas favourites that we know and love now, but then also talking about some slightly less savoury ones that maybe we don't want to have back. And hopefully this will really get you in the Christmas mood in November. My next recommendation is Why We Sing by Julia Hollander. The prompt of join basically made me think of my own life and where I have typically wanted to join, where I've typically wanted to gather, and a lot of the time it is through music and through singing. I recommend joining a choir to everybody. And this non-fiction book takes you from birth to death and the different ways in which singing can really improve your life, both personal anecdotes as well as the science behind it. But singing can have such profound impact on your mental and physical health. She talks about this really interesting data behind singing therapy and long COVID sufferers. But aside from that, just the feel-good endorphins that you can get from singing, the way that singing together, especially in a choir, can really just bond people. I'm very biased, but yeah, I think this was a great book. And then my final recommendation is 18 by Alice Loxton. If my review video for this hasn't already come out, then it will be soon. But I wanted to recommend this again because not only is this a collection, a joining together of lots of different historical figures and talking about what their lives were like at the point that they turned 18, but a really fun little trick that Alice Loxton does is that she imagines all of these different historical figures, from Empress Matilda to Elizabeth I to Richard Burton to Vivienne Westwood, all together at a combined 18th birthday party. And so I thought this was a great suggestion for this prompt. How they would interact with each other, who would get on with who, what kind of discussions they would have, which is just a great thought experiment in itself, as well as the history behind these people, their childhoods, and how their young selves would influence on the decisions that they would make in their adult lives. As I say, I talk about this more in its individual book review, which is either coming soon or has just come out. But yeah, one that is really fun and I definitely recommend for the prompt of join. So there we go, those are 12 different book recommendations to go along with the prompts for Nonfiction November this year. Do let me know if you've read any of the books I've spoken about today Alternatively, do let me know about any recommendations that you would have for the fall prompts. Once again, to remind you, they are code, path, shot and join. So any recommendations you have for those fall prompts, I would love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.